All right. Hello, everyone. It is Bentley and Matt again. Thank you for joining us. We've got some exciting stuff that we're going to work on today. Quick introduction for those of you who haven't tuned in the one time before. I am Bentley, developer advocate at Trello. So I work with people building power-ups like the one we're going to be building today all the time. And this is Matt.
Hey, I'm Matt, and I'm a developer here at Trello, building both power-ups and the platform on which they run.
Sweet. So I'm in chat. So if you guys have questions at any point, feel free to drop them into the YouTube chat there. Happy to answer questions. Or if it doesn't sound good or we need to be louder, just yell at us. Matt and I are used to being yelled at. So quick catch up from the last time we did one of these. We started building a weather power-up, and what the weather power-up did was it worked alongside the map power-up. So the map power-up allows you to add a location to a card, and the weather power-up took that location, used a weather API, and showed the weather in the location of the card in badges. So here Matt has open the map power-up. We can see we've got a board with some national parks on it, and they have different locations, based on where those national parks are. And you can see they actually have because of the way they pull in cards, we can actually see the card badges that are weather power-up added there. So we can see Glacier National Park, 71 degrees Fahrenheit, a slight breeze and clear skies. And we also added it as card detail badges, which is another power-up capability. So again, this is all power-ups. We're building on the existing power-up that we started. I'll drop the repository where we have the weather power-up built. So if you want to follow along, if you want to clone, or if you want to open an issue, ask questions, we're definitely here to help you build cool power-ups. And today, Matt, what are we adding to our power-up today?
Yeah, so as Bentley mentioned, the weather details here right now are only useful for so much of the world. And by so much, I mean very little. Because we are showing all of the temperatures and the wind speed in degrees Fahrenheit, miles per hour, which for our friends and colleagues in other parts of the world isn't particularly useful. In addition, right, to as while we're at it, making this power-up more friendly to folks all across the world, we'll want to also kind of handle the text that we've got here, so clear or cloudy. Again, that's not particularly useful if you speak any language other than English. And Trello supports quite a few languages that are not English. So all of the folks that are using Trello in one of these, 20-something languages, probably are not going to appreciate that or get any value out of the power-up that we've provided so far, because it won't be able to read it.
The real question, Matt, is what's the difference between AU English, UK English, and US English?
That is a good question. I do know the answer for UK, but I don't know the answer. Well, the Queen's English is being an Australian company. The Queen's English we've got for both of these. I believe though that the main difference that Trello does if you switch to one of the Queen's English is date formatting. So you'll get the same strings, but we will actually format dates more politely so that the Queen can respect us.
Cool, sweet. So this is exciting. So we're gonna use some new capabilities, and yeah, let's dive in. Where should we get started?
Yeah, well, I mean, I should mention that this is all live, and we have not practiced this, so you're going to see the real raw. How does power-up get made, and what are the decisions that get made along the way? And Bentley's kind of led us into the first question there, which is All right, let's set the stage with our goal. Our goal first is going to be units, letting users choose their preferred units, whether they want imperial or whether they want metric. So we need to give them that choice. And so I guess my question to Bentley is there something that you know of in the PowerUps platform that we could use to kind of let the user make that choice?
That sounds strikingly similar to user settings of some sort. And I do happen to know that we have a capability where we recommend PowerUps add any sort of settings-related capabilities or settings-related options down at the very bottom there. So show settings is a pattern I think that we've established that users know to seek out whenever they think that they need to add settings to a PowerUp.
Yeah, so this looks like it's going to give us a gear icon. I have some suspicions that these screenshots are perhaps not as up to date as they could be.
We should ask our developer advocate to be better at their job and update those.
Leave some comments in the chat around how you think Bentley is doing at his job. We'll send those along to his manager. But for now, let's give this guy a shot. So the first thing that we need to do, well, beyond looking at the docs, is we are going to want to actually code this up in our PowerUp. And once we do that, we'll come back here, because as Bentley mentioned, the only ones that we've told Trello we respect right now are card badges and card detail badges. So once we've got show settings all ready to go, we're going to come back here and toggle it on. But before we do that, we need to actually write some code for what it's going to do. So here is, this is Visual Studio Code, but use whatever editor of your choice. And we've got the code from the repo that Bentley mentioned. You can find this in the docs. We'll also kind of add it to the video description as well. I've got this guy cloned. This is the code as it stands right now. And so if I kind of scroll down this singular file that we've got, you can see we've only got these two guys going so far. So that means I think it's time to add a third. So we want show settings, and it's time to decide what that does. So that'll be a function. It'll take our standard kind of T object, and it's going to do something with that. And the thing I think that I want to do with it, let's come back to the docs for a moment. We need to show some UI to let the user say whether they want imperial or metric. So in my mind, we want to go to the UI functions here, and luckily enough, pop-up is the first one. I tend to think of the pop-up control as kind of the workhorse of your like PowerUps UI controls, right? It should be the first thing you lean towards, and then all of the other ones tend to be a bit more specialized. And the pop-up control is a bit complex because it has a handful of ways that it can operate. It can show a list of things. It can show a search control. But we don't actually want either of those. We want the most generic one, which is this last guy here, which is, hey, just let me show my own content in this control. So let me just show it an iframe. So I want to just kind of see how that works. So it's p.popup, and we give it these things. So like a good programmer, we're just going to copy paste this, change it to work for us. All right, so we're telling Trello to open up a pop-up. Let's give it a title. Weather settings. All right, it needs a URL. So this is interesting. It means we need to create a new page for it. So I'm going to do that. We'll call it settings.html. Let's come back here and put that in. All right. So we've got our title, will be weather settings. It will open up settings.html. Arguments, I don't think we need any arguments, so we're just gonna drop this guy. And for now, we won't give it an initial height, but once we get a better sense of how this is looking and working, we might come back and add that again. All right. We have since added a linter to this so that hopefully it'll catch my errors before we find them out later. So if you see little red underlines or the little idea bubble, that's probably what it's coming from. All right, so we've got, let's come to our little settings page. Let's just start by filling it in kind of like this guy. And we're probably gonna want a new script. So let's make a new settings JavaScript file. We'll put something there later, but we'll put this is the settings file. I think we're gonna want one more thing before we take a look at what we've done. And this is, we're gonna link off to Trello's provided a little bit of CSS. And maybe while I do this, Bentley, do you want to talk a little bit about why we might want to include Trello's a little bit of CSS?
Yeah, so we hope that power-ups are always a natural extension of Trello, and so we try our best to add things to the platform that make it easy to build Trello-y things. And as Trello is always changing its brand and updating colors and the way things look, it can be hard for you to try and keep that up to date yourself. So we've provided this nice CSS style sheet for you that we keep up to date with styles. That way, if you use it as Trello updates its styles, you get those updates automatically. So you'll get really nice buttons that look very, they're like the Trello green buttons. A lot of the mod danger buttons look the same. So it's just a nice way to kind of get some free Trello-y styling out of us, writing a little less CSS for yourself.
Cool. So I've added it. It lives kind of the same place that the PowerUp.js lives. So we've added a link off to it. And all I've added to this page so far is this little paragraph tag with hi there. So we want to see and confirm for ourselves that this is working. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and we're going to just make a look to there. So we've added this new file, we've added show settings and the JavaScript file. So let's go ahead and we are going to commit this to GitHub. So we're just going to say added show settings for the settings page.
And I'd totally forgotten that this was, we used Netlify in the first, we set up Netlify in the first video to host it for us, so it's all static. And
yes, and you have other options, right? I think, well, what else might you recommend, Bentley?
GitHub Pages is great. Tossing it in any, so long as it's static, right? So we're just, at this point in time, our power-ups just in all static files, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So long as it's accessible via the internet, you can use it. We like to use glitch.com for hosting power-ups that we're hacking on. You can toss it in an S3 bucket, all sorts of things. Anywhere that you can jam a web page.
Yeah, I think I've even seen somebody build a power-up out of just a Dropbox public folder.
Oh yeah.
They had a Dropbox folder, they made it public. Was that you?
Yeah, that was I think we used to have an example of that. Do they have public folders? I don't think you can do that anymore.
That's a shame. It was cool. Maybe you can still do it. All right, so our little change here is all published. So if I were to refresh this page, which I'll do, we actually don't expect show settings, even though, so here's our little warning message that can tell us exactly what we need to do. So our power implements capabilities that haven't been enabled show settings. So that's true. I just implemented show settings, but I haven't enabled it. So that little reminder tells me come in here, enable show settings, and now let's come back. Let's clear this guy out and give it another shot. Parsing source map. All right. So as mentioned, those screenshots may be not as accurate as they once were. But what we've given ourselves is this edit power-up setting. So beforehand, kind of looked like this. We could have just selected the power-up or disabled it. Now we've got this middle option, edit power-up settings. And when I click this, Trello is going to call into the capability that we wrote, and that code is going to get a chance to run. So let's see what happens. All right, good sign. So we see our hi there page, although that text is looking pretty basic. And we have a great error. So one of the things that we've added to this power up since the last stream was a bit more of kind of security protection for ourselves. So what we've done here, and this is how Netlify does it, but these are nothing but HTML. These are response headers. So we're having, when Netlify serves our content, we're having it also serve these headers with the response. And this content security policy is what's letting us kind of lock down, as far as the browser is concerned, what code it will let run, what styles it'll let run. So we're saying, okay, by default, you can let anything that comes from me run. As far as who you're allowed to make connections with, so this is things like XHRs, right? So we're saying, okay, I am allowed to talk to myself. I'm also allowed to talk to Trello's CDN and the weather map API that we're using. So we've got our script source. So what I think we need is a style source that we can tell Trello that we should be able to load styles from ourselves. But just like with the scripts, we should also be able to load them from Trello. So we're going to save this, and this should let our styles come through. And so we'll say add Trello styles.
And you have Netlify building on every commit to master, correct?
Exactly. So we are right now we are committing directly to and pushing directly to the master branch. And Netlify, when we set it up, we told it that master was the branch that we wanted it to kind of keep an eye on and build. So you can kind of see that's already picked up on that. Sees our little add Trello CDN, and it's already building. And this kind of ease of use for it, like it's nice. This is nice Netlify, but you'll get this same experience if you use GitHub Pages. GitHub Pages will automatically build and deploy your branch on additional commits. And same thing, you could use Heroku. It has a very similar logic. This should be wrapping up. It's a good sign. Found our little header rule, and it was deployed without errors. Good. So let's swing back to this guy and see if that has wrapped up our issue. We actually probably didn't need to reload because the only thing that has changed. There we go. So we've cleared up that error, and now we're using the same kind of font that Trello is. So good. So we've got our popover, or rather our pop-up, where we can show stuff. So let's actually put some real stuff in here. So what we said we wanted to do at the beginning was allow the user to change between what units they want. So let's add that to the page. So we're going to do something like...
You can do radio buttons?
Something like radio buttons. So we'll give it a little... what do you want to say? I don't know how to spell preferred. Is that how you spell preferred?
I think so. You don't have spell check running in VS Code?
I probably do, but sometimes it's hard to trust. I should preface this with I'm obviously not a designer. You don't need to be, right? It doesn't have to be beautiful. It's supposed to work. All right, so we're only going to let you toggle between two different units here. We'll let you toggle between metric and imperial. So let's do that. So we need 2 radio buttons. So we'll do 2 input type radio. That's good. We'll group them in the same thing. So we'll do name is units. And what do we want value. For this guy will be metric. And I'm going to copy that guy. And this one will be imperial. All right, so we've got 2 radio buttons. I think what we should do for a little bit, so with these things, add some labels for them too. So we're going to do label for, I probably need to give this guy an ID for that to work. ID equals metric. That way I can say for metric. All right, the label for metric is going to be the word metric. And we're going to copy that and do the same guy here. So this will get Imperial ID. And we're going to copy that out here. Not that way. All right, All right, so now we should have our little page say preferred units. Maybe we'll even truly, hopefully nobody's watching this. Switch, we'll use a little bit of bold. We'll have our horizontal rule, and this is looking good. So, and then we'll have our little setting script. So let's see if that what we've done here looks nice. So we'll do add unit choice radio settings page. There we go. I'll let that guy go up to GitHub so that can get built. And in the meantime, so what we're going to need to do now is we need to wire this up so that we actually do something with these guys when we load the page. So what we're going to use for that is that settings.js file that we created. So let's pop this guy open so that we can keep an eye on how that's moving along. It's building, that's good. All right, so we need to do a few things with this guy. And there's a couple important concepts to know as we get started here, especially when it comes to what I would call a secondary iframe in Trello, right? Where you are showing an iframe, your power up is showing an iframe somewhere in the Trello experience. You might want to change some of the content on that page as things change inside of Trello. So what's a good example of that, Bentley? Like when might something in Trello change that you'd want to change? Let's say that maybe perhaps the content of this iframe.
And if any of your,
or if you have another iframe.
As if any of the data you have stored has changed.
Yeah, exactly, right? So we're going to be storing your choice, right? Whether you're in Imperial or metric. And I think something that's easy to forget is that might change somewhere else, right? And somebody can have your tab open on, I have two of this tab open. We may try that, and we'll want to kind of see that reflected. So it looks like our deploy is all wrapped. So let's just double check. All right, it's not beautiful, but it's getting there. Let's take a wow, big text here. Truly enormous text. All right, so we've got our radio buttons. They're clickable. Nothing is pre-selected, so we might want to change that. Nothing happens when I click these things. So we have all of that logic to add, but hey, at least we're showing something. All right, we'll have to play around with the CSS for this to line these guys up a bit better. So let's come back to the code so that we can add a little bit of logic. So let's start by having our, so when you back to the kind of the secondary iframe idea, in your, what I would describe, right, your iframe connector, the primary iframe, the first one that Trello loads, when you talk to Trello, you talk to it through this kind of initialize method. You're initializing your power to talk to Trello, and it responds to capabilities. Secondary iframes work a little bit differently. So I won't be doing this window Trello power initialize. Instead, I'm going to tell Trello that what I want is const t is window Trello power an iframe. So I'm going to be creating an iframe, and then this is going to let me get that same kind of t object through which I can communicate with Trello. So that's perfect. So now I have something that I can use to talk to Trello and ask Trello questions. So the first thing that we're going to do, well, let's kind of wrap some of this stuff up in. So there's let's see, I don't actually know which of our doc pages will have a little bit more detail on the render method. Do you know the answer to that, Bentley? Is there a good
Is it in client library?
Could be.
Yeah, right in the middle there. Up a little bit. Yeah.
Hey, all right. Whenever you're displaying a visible, that's exactly. So this t.render method, right, used off of the t that you get back from iframe, it takes a function, and the function will be called by Trello anytime Trello thinks something that might be important to you has changed. So anytime that you want, if there are things that you want to be updating about your UI in response to something changing in Trello, you'd want this function that we give to the render function to have the logic to replace that. So let's do that. We're going to say So this guy is going to be a simple little function. Perfect. Simple little function. And the first thing that we need this thing to do is we said we're going to be storing these settings. So this is an interesting question. So where we have to decide where is the most appropriate place to store these settings. And I'm going to make the claim that it's nice that Trello gives you some space to store this. So we're going to click into here, and this will be a question for Bentley. So of our available scopes, visibilities, specifically for your unit choice, what probably makes the most sense of these guys to store that information?
So normally, I feel like for most settings, we recommend that people store them at the board. One of the things that we like saying is that Trello has a shared context, and that way, if you're doing like, for instance, we see power ups that have like that do burn downs or like sprint points and estimations, and like you don't want one person's estimations to be using Fibonacci numbers and the other ones to be using like monotonically increasing numbers. But it feels like for this may be a personal preference where we would want to store it on the member.
Yeah, so I think I agree. I think that so you said personal preference. So what does that translate to here? So member is nice because that will follow you on any board that you go to.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Oh, is this and private? So it's only, we don't want to leak what your metric or what your unit of preference is.
Yeah, exactly. Only I should be able to see, and it should be tied to me. That I want Imperial, so that that can be private to me, and I don't have to be embarrassed by all of my friends who use metric. So let's kind of write that up. So what we're going to do, as Bentley says, we're going to say the scope we want this data from is the member. So we're saying get on the current member some private data, and then so now this is going to be the key. So we'll do the key is units, and then the next thing here. This is an optional parameter. This is the default value, right? To fall back to what should Trello give you if the thing that you're asking for doesn't yet exist, which, right, for a new user, you won't have this value. So how about we try to be clever? Should we try to be clever? Let's try to be clever. So const default is function, it's a locale. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say if locale yen US return Imperial, otherwise. That feels a ballpark, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that feel to you, Bentley?
We're leaving off with the two other countries who have yet to make the switch.
We are.
But that's fine.
We'll leave that up to the reader, an exercise for the reader to look up what those two countries are and potentially add support for them. But hey, maybe this is probably nicer than setting everybody to Imperial.
Yeah, much nicer.
And a little bit nicer than setting it to metric. So what this means, though, right, is we need this locale thing. How do I know the current user's locale? So there's a couple options. In a secondary iframe, by the time t.render is called, it's guaranteed that Trello will have set the locale for you on the window object. So we could use window.locale. We can also, though, get it out of the context of the requests. And I think that's what we'll do. So we're going to use t.getContext to get the context for our request. And then I think we'll ask for the locale from that guy. So this will kind of give us our default. So what we're going to do here is we'll give us back our unit preference. All right, so we've asked Trello. Oops, this is no good. This is going to give us back our locale. We need to call our default unit function with that. All right, so now we'll actually get back unit preference. As I said, all the red underlining, this is the linter complaining. There we go. Cleaning it up a little bit. Sorry, so we've got our unit preference back. So what we need to do is actually kind of change our HTML and check the appropriate radio button based on what your preference is. So let's do that. So we know, we'll just grab them, right? So we'll say const metric button document .e, and what did it say? So that guy's metric, and our imperial button is this guy. All right, so we've got those guys now. So what we should be able to do is set metric, if unit preference is metric. We're just not shooting for pretty or most optimized right now. We're shooting for works. We can always make it better later. All right, so if the unit preference is metric, then we're going to go ahead and what do we want to do?
Is it value?
Value
or is it checked?
Value equals checked, yeah. Is that what I want?
This will be the hardest part of this.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Start Googling it, Bentley.
Update a radio button with vanilla JavaScript.
Is it a Boolean? I can't remember all of these things off the top of our head.
It looks like dot checked is a Boolean. Dot checked equals Boolean.
Hey, all right, so let's do dot checked.
Based on the first Stack Overflow link that I clicked on.
That's good enough for me. All right. So if it's metric, we'll check the metric one. If it's imperial, we'll check the imperial one. All right, that seems like enough for us to take a look and see if we've written something that works. So let's go ahead and push this guy up. We will say check best unit button by default. Best used very loosely here. All right, so while that guy's cooking, we are going to want to do a bit more than that, because we need to wire these guys up so that when you do change them, right, when the user changes them, we actually set this guy. So let's do that. How do we want to do that? Let's do it like this. Let's go ahead and we're going to grab them all. So this will get us, who knows? Settings, units, plural. All right. All right, so for each of our little buttons here, let's go ahead and do radio button, add event listener, thank you, VS Code. All right, what do we want? We want probably change, so change. We need to do something, so let's do event. All right, and here all we need to do is we'll do t.set, the same thing, member, private, units, nights, and then our value. And our value is probably going to be, what is our value going to be? E is going to be probably e.target value. Maybe? Who knows? That seems close enough. Let's help ourselves out. Yeah. So, all right. So when either of these guys changes, we should be going ahead and calling tset to set the new value. So that seems like a good thing for us to be doing. And then we'll go ahead and we'll check that this guy works. And And if it does work, then that's perfect. It means that we have a way for the user to set their preferences, and we'll come back in and we'll then try to respect the preferences in our connector. So let's see where we're at. Oh, I should, of course, commit this change. What did we do? Save unit preferences. Yes, unit preferences. All right, so while that's building, we should be able to see that so where it was unchecked by default before, we click it now, you see that it's getting checked. So it's checked metric, which is an interesting choice because I suspect that our locale is ENUS. So maybe that's not working quite right. Let's see. How do we want to test that? What we can do, let's get into this frame here. So, all right, so now we're in our settings frame. So let's take a look. All right, that looks like ENUS. And do we have our, no, we don't have T. All right, well, we'll come back. So this guy is building our event listener. It's all done. Let's just refresh it for peace of mind. All right, let's see what we've got. So I still am a metric, but what we want to check, let's make this a little bit bigger here. We want to see that this value is being saved. Oh, it's wildly misplaced. So we want to see an XHR go out when we change it. So let's change it to Imperial. All right, that's a good sign. So we see a little bit of plugin data. We see some plugin data being set on the member. And let's take a look at what that looks like. Yep, units is set to Imperial. All right, that's a good sign. And if I toggle it back to metric, there we go, back to Imperial, good. So hopefully, let's come back and see. So we've set it to Imperial. Let's see if it still knows that we have that there. Good, so it's putting it back in Imperial when we had it to Imperial. If I change it back to metric and I reload it, it should still say metric. Good,
it's worth
perfect.
Probably pointing out too, if you go back, you'll see we now have a new remove personal settings, which shows up because we stored that at the private, right? So whenever a user clicks this, Trello will go in and blast all of the plugin data that's been stored via t.set private for that member.
Delete request go out.
Yeah.
And so now, well, if this was working, I would expect it to be Imperial, but so clearly we know that our little default logic isn't quite working. So let's see why that is. So we're going to do console log unit, and that will be used. We'll use that to figure out what's going on over there. But let's come back over here because we do have this guy saving. We can now use this in order to make this request. So we have a little bit of code change to do. So you can see here when we hit the weather API, we can actually pass the units through. But I think it's going to be a bit trickier than just passing, loading the right unit and passing it, because we actually cache all of the weather data, and we're trying to cache it for all the members on the board who may, some might be using Imperial units, some might be using metric units. So we actually do want to make this request, save it, and then we probably want to do the conversions, which means that we get to learn how to convert between kilometers per hour and miles per hour and Celsius and Fahrenheit right here on stream. So who knew we were going to learn some, we're all going to learn at the same time because I don't know this off the top of my head either. So what we'll do, let's go ahead and we'll always request the values in metric. We're going to stop. We're going to break everything here. So that means that this temperature value is going to come to us in Celsius. The wind speed is going to come to us in kilometers per hour. And then everything else kind of remains unchanged. So we're going to actually be caching the raw values as they are in metric. and we're going to have to convert those values if you wanted it in Imperial later. So let's see where this guy gets used. So when we are getting the weather badges, so here we are. So we're using the temperature values. So here, with this guy, we actually need to, and truly with all of these, we need to know your preferences. So let's actually have this load your unit preferences at the same time. So let's make both of those. We're going to use promise all to say we're going to be doing more than one promise here. So the first one, we'll keep loading the coordinates of the card. Seems we still need that. But let's also load those unit preferences like we were loading before. So here we're going to load, we said we're throwing them on the member privately. Units, and so what we probably want here is we want to be able to make use of that default that we had. So I think, how do we want to do that? So we want to expose that. So we're going to be bad developers for a moment. We're just going to copy paste this, but I promise we'll come back. We'll make it better later. Let's put this guy here so that we can use it, even though some might say that it does not yet work.
Yeah, I looked in the docs, and get context doesn't return a locale.
Oh, you're making a liar of me.
The docs may be wrong, but according to our docs, that is not returned in t.getContext.
Let's have a little explore here for a moment.
Go see what
let's go into this guy and let's just give ourselves a const. He is that guy. What does our context look like? Starting to feel like Bentley's awfully right. Forward command L. Ain't no locale in there. Wild. Could have sworn. Huh. All right. Well, good catch. Let's switch to window locale, and then we'll come back and see if it's better one. So let's cut this guy down for window.
We'll make a feature request to the team that adds things to the client library to add.
We'll have a few words with them. All right, so this should now be probably working right, since, yep. I am so confident that we will no longer need that we're going to drop it.
I had a question on the connector JS use promise.all,
yes.
and that is available because you're using the Bluebird Promise that's included by us, right?
Yes, although I think promise all is now a standard promise feature, but what we're about to do is use something that's not. So let's go ahead and use our copy pasted thing here. So if he, all right, I have ideas. So let's cut this guy down. That's plural. Okay. So this guy. Truly, I'm gonna take another wild guess here, and I'm gonna guess that locale lives on the opposite object. Could be wrong. We'll find out. All right, so we're saying, hey, this array of promises. So one is loading coordinates on the card, the other is getting your unit preference. We're gonna wait for them, and then here we're gonna use a little bit of a Bluebird specialty. Which is spread. So spread takes, this is going to give me back an array of responses. Spread is going to spread that array out into, think of it like JavaScript apply is going to give us those as multiple values, which means I can now change this guy to first is going to be card and second is going to be units. So most of this logic remains unchanged. We just need to change these two guys because these guys have units that might change. So weather temp we know is in Celsius. So let's do a little bit of work here. So what we want to do is, what we'll say, let temp, what do we want this to be? We're going to say if units is metric, we don't really have to do too much here. Actually, let's do it like this. let temp with a lower t. And we're going to set that equal to weather data temp, which is just the Celsius number for now. If our units are metric, we don't have any conversion to do, we're just going to lop it down to a single digit. So we'll say temperature is temp to fixed. Oh, and we're going to make it a string, so it's going to be fancy. So we're going to string this out. So to fixed, all that's going to do is make it, going to round it to the nearest whole number. And then here, we're going to say that it's Celsius. So let's put our little degrees Celsius. Okay, we did the easy one. Otherwise, that means it's metric and we have to do a bit more work. So, Bentley, do you know this off the top of your head, or are we going to look it up?
You're definitely looking this up.
All right, Celsius to Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah, why didn't we consider Kelvin that?
We could, well, I mean, again, some things are best left as an exercise for the reader. Equation. I want the equation. I don't want the. All right. To convert temperatures in degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit, multiply by 1.8 and add 32. Totally makes worlds of sense. All right. So let's do the same thing. This will be degrees Fahrenheit. And what we want to do is this is going to be a number. So we want to, before we fixed it, we want to multiply it by 1.8 and then add 32. So let's do that. Multiply by 1.8 and then add 32. And let's just bracket that to be extra special careful. And then now let's just swap this guy out with temperature. All right. Hopefully we've got our temperature. So that means now we get to do wind speed, which means we get to look up another equation. So let's do this. So let's do let wind speed is this guy, weather data wind. And we're going to do the same. Units is metric. And we're already in kph. Otherwise, we need to get to mph. So let's do the easy one first. So we'll take this guy. And we will say wind speed is equal to this guy. So this becomes wind speed. Sorry, so we're going to just lop it off to the nearest whole number, and this is kilometers per hour. I hope we can double check that. Otherwise, we get to do an equation again. Let's take this guy.
This one's much easier.
Oh, good.
Just
what is it? You want to tell the class?
It's just miles per hour times 1.6.
You mean kilometers per hour? No, I think you're going the wrong way.
Oh, I'm going the wrong way.
Although, truly time to get out pen and paper here. So if it was times 1.6, then do I just divide it by 1.6? Yes?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, that's going to make a fool of both of us.
Oh, times 0.62.
Times 0.62?
Yeah. 1 kilometer per hour equals
62 or 0.62 miles
per hour, yeah.
Truly. The world we live in. All right, so we've got wind speed, kilometers per hour is the default if you're in metric, otherwise miles per hour. And then we'll drop this guy in here. This will be our wind speed value, which we should get a nice little comment here. All right. Uh-oh, that red mark is giving me doubts that I've maybe not done something right. Let's find out. I definitely didn't do something right. All right, where are we?
Your spread, you don't, right after your spread, your indentation's weird. Right.
Say that again?
Don't you want that indented one more after the if?
Oh, let's chop this guy down so maybe I can get a better sense of what our. Oh, yep. Hold on. I think we broke our. Should be. this. This closes this guy, and then we need to close that guy. Perhaps we got it. Let's try to build again to see if that got it. All right, that got it. Good. So let's go ahead and see if that works. So we've got our connector changes. So we're always going to request the metric, and we're going to store the temperature and speed as they are, and we do the conversion, and hopefully we fixed our little bug over here. So let's give that a shot. So badges in preferred. All right. Up for its build. All right, what do we think? 50-50 chance? It feels like usual. All right, it's built all of our code. Good. Let's see if we got it. Let's shrink this guy down a little bit.
If anyone's curious about the background noise, Matt is actually in our New York City headquarters. We have an office there. So you can hear other people frantically writing code.
Do you think we messed it up, Bentley? Because I have a suspicion that we messed it up.
It is burning hot.
Damn, Glacier National Park is Yosemite. Sorry. Not a good sign. I have a suspicion that the problem is the cached values, because we used to be caching values that were Fahrenheit. So now I think we are turning our old cached Fahrenheit values into treating them as if they were Celsius.
That would make sense.
So yeah. So I think the way for us to handle this is let's set ourselves to metric for now, and let's get rid of these cards. Let's make ourselves some fresh new cards that haven't seen. What's a national park do you like, Bentley? It's one that's near you.
Chickamauga.
Oh God, why did you give me ones that are hard?
It's
Spell that for us.
CHICK. Oh yeah, AMAUGA.
AMAGUA.
MAUGA.
Oh, UGA. All right, let's copy that. Hopefully, is it in Georgia?
It is.
All right, there we go.
It's a national military park. Actually, I don't know if it's. Oh yeah, it's coming up on nps.gov.
All right, so that's a good sign. 24 degrees C feels like I don't know. I'm not a Celsius person, but that seems in line. 5 kph, cloudy. All right, so what we should see. We kind of mentioned this, right? When you change data associated with your power up, Trello will recall your capabilities because it assumes that might lead to a change. So what we would expect here is that if I change this guy to Imperial, I want this card to automatically update to Imperial units. So let's see if that works. Click Imperial. There we go. So we're in business. So now I have a better sense for 24C. It's apparently 74 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind speed of 3 miles per hour. And that is reflected on the back of the card as well. And we're going to just, for the sake of completeness, switch back to metric, back to 24C. All right, good. I think we'll call that complete on part 1. And let's do part 2 here. So we mentioned that in addition to changing unit type, the other thing that we want to do to be fully global friendly is actually preferred units probably doesn't mean a lot to you if you speak Brazilian Portuguese or if you speak Spanish or French. So this isn't a particularly helpful dialogue for you. I think we can do better. So let's actually try to do better. So to do that, we're going to do a couple of things. The first thing that we're going to do here, and this is subtle, but is kind of worth doing regardless, is that generally when you draw an iframe for Trello, you need to tell us the size a priori, or after you've drawn it, you can ask us to resize you to be appropriate. So let's just kind of throw that in here while we're finishing this guy up. So what we'll do, this guy's going to check our box, so that won't really move anything around. So, but why not? So there's another function that we can look up, which is called key.size2, useful again for your iframes, asking Trello to resize your iframe vertically to fit, well, whatever you ask for here. In this case, I think I'm going to ask Trello to size it to fit, I don't know, what feels appropriate, document.body for now. That seems like, you just tell Trello, hey, like, look at the size of the body of this thing and try to size my window appropriately. So we're going to drop that guy in there. The next thing that we need to do is we need to actually add, let's look at all the words that we're displaying, shall we? So we've got this metric and imperial and preferred units. Right, again, these are all English only, which is no good. So what we need to do is replace these guys with the right language. And so Trello has tried to make that easy for you. Right? If you're doing simple localization, then you can use our simple tool to do that. So let's take a look at the docs. We've got a whole localization section. And again, I want to prefix this with if you have a localization system that works for you, please use that. If not, then the simple one that Trello provides is, if nothing else, a great starting point. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder in our source here, because we need a folder for our strings. Like where are all these localized strings going to live? We have an English one, and maybe we'll do a Spanish one. We can add more later. And these are just JSON files. And the way this will work is those are the 3 words we want to translate, and we'll give them keys. So I'll call this preferred units. And that's this string, preferred units. Not that. Metric, with capital, and the string for imperial. Now we have a little JSON file. It's got our 3 English strings. Now I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna translate these guys with Google Translate. There are many translation services out there. I've personally used some good ones where you can do crowdsourced translations, which was how actually Trello first translated itself into a bunch of the languages, right? Turns out if you have a bunch of people using your Power Up that like it, some of them will likely be willing to help you translate it into their native languages. And there's also plenty of services where you can pay professional translators to give you back translations. So there's a whole wealth of resources out there. This is for the purposes of demonstration. We're going to use Google Translate. So let's give this guy a shot. So we're going to we'll start with our first string here, preferred units. Certainly, we're going to just truly hope that that's at least roughly close. So let's come in here. We're going to do a couple things. We need to keep the keys the same, but we're going to change the values to their localized values. So let's start with this first one. Leave a colon in there. And let's get the other 2. So we want to know what is the translation for metric over base there. That's a good sign. So I don't know. Do you know, Bentley? Masculine, feminine?
I would assume it's the adjective, right?
Yes. So the masculine. Let's go with the masculine. And let's get our last one. Over relating to adjective, over relating to adjective imperial. Yeah. Oh, look at that. It's the same thing. Not even an accent. Okay. So we've got our strings here. These are our Spanish strings. These are our English strings.
Oh, do you want to grab the pop-up title as well?
I do. That's a good idea. What did we call our pop-up title? That was probably, this is birdless. Weather settings. Good call. Let's do weather settings. Let's go back to weather settings. That's got 2 keys, but that's okay. Okay, and let's get this guy translated as well. So weather settings is, sure, that is right. I took Spanish many years ago, so there's really no help with this for me. We should have done Russian. We could have had Bentley help us. We can still do Russian. There's still hope. We'll come back to Russian once we get Spanish working. All right, so good. We've got our strings. Let's come back here. And so what we need to do is we need to tell Trello a bit about what are the languages that we support and where do the strings live, which is this guy. And it kind of shows us like, all right, the way you pass that is you can pass it to the iframe thing or the initialize. We're going to need to pass it to both. So let's come here. So here's our initialize. And let's here, again, we're just going to copy paste from the docs. So we want this guy. Localization, so we'll say our default locale is English, supported EN and ES. And then again, this is telling Trello where to fetch that from. So we have it in a folder called strings, so that's good. And we named it appropriately. So the name of the file is the locale JSON. All of the red is prettier. Whoops, that was certainly not what I wanted to do. One second, let's disable. There we go.
For that resource URL, do you need to go up one more folder since you're in the JS folder?
So this will be a relative URL relative to the path that you're living at. So even though we're in, so it's not going to be relative to your file system, it's going to be relative to the pathing that you're serving your resources from.
Cool.
So that should actually be okay. But the problem that we'll have right now is that our build system is not going to be moving. So if let's take a look at this. If I build our current project, because these files aren't directly referenced, our build system does not know to put them into the dist, so they're not there, and that's not good. So what we need to do is we need to tell our system, so here we go, we're going to have it treat these things as static files, just like we're having it treat our images as static files, and we're going to tell it that, hey, we want you to bring along strings. Let's see if that gets us what we want. Nice. Did get us what we want, but not in a subfolder. So I've got the thing that we're using. Let's see if there's a way to get those in the subfolder. No problem. We'll have it reference them directly. Copy different files from different directory based on output directory. I don't know if that's what we want. All right, we'll come back and look at this in a bit. But for now, the way we're going to make this work is these guys are going to be a top level item. So we're just going to tell it that it's a top level item. All right, so now those guys are top level items. They're being built. That's good. They're not being used. They're there. And Trello knows to fetch them, but it's not using them. So let's start with this guy. This is an easy one to replace. So we don't want to use this string. We want to ask Trello to give us the localized version. So let's look through how we might do that. You'd think we would have put it in the same docs as that, but not always. All right, here they are. So we've got three little helper functions: localize key to localize a singular key, localize keys to localize multiple keys, or localize a whole DOM node. So we're going to come back to this guy because this will be useful in a minute. But for this first one, all we actually care to do is localize a single key. And so you can kind of do string interpolation with your localization. Luckily, ours is simple enough. We don't need that just yet. So let's kind of do this. We have a T. That's good. So we can call this localize key method. We don't need to pass any data. We just need to ask for the right key. So let's double check what we made that. So that's this guy. So in here, and we're going to tell it. So t.localize key will take the key and give you back the right string based on what language the user is currently in. So that's good. So we've localized the title for that guy. And we're going to have we have more things to localize here. So we'll come back. Let's get some of this set up, and we'll come back and localize the rest of our strings. So, but we already know how we will localize these. Right? We'll use the localize t.localize key just like we're using down here once we have the keys in. These other ones, though, these strings live in our HTML. And we kind of want them to keep living in our HTML because this is the right place for them to live. So what we want to use is localize node, right, which lets us tell Trello, hey, I need you to localize this DOM node, go look through it and replace things. And so the whole trick here is using these data I18 and ID tags in place. So let's give that a shot. And here, this tag is going to tell Trello what's the key that you should replace the node with. So in this case, this will be preferred. Indeed. And we'll just kind of copy this to be the same idea for these guys. So this will be the string metric, and this guy will be Imperial. Sweet. And so we can have these, like we can leave these in there as the default, and Trello will overwrite them. I can drop these guys out for now. We'll just leave them, and Trello is going to kind of overwrite them when we ask it to localize this node.
Oh, there you have the title.
I do have the title. I wonder if
does that, but that doesn't get rendered, does it?
Doesn't get rendered in this case. You're right. It doesn't strictly. We don't need a title. We can have the. We can let the linter yell at us. It's not strictly required. All right. So let's see. So we've got these guys localized. Let's knock these all out in one shot, shall we? So we want to do 3 more strings. We have conditions, wind speed, and temperature. So let's add those. Conditions, wind speed, and temperature. All right, let's get those guys translated. So conditions, state of something. Conditions, yeah, I want the noun. Oh, I feel like I want that. That seems roughly. Oh, okay. Here, conditions. In all right, now we can fill in these guys. So we want wind speed. Like that one, that one feels right. And temperature. Oops. Oh, right. Interesting. All right. So now we've got those, and we're going to use the same trick in here. So we have this Trello object, which should be plenty good enough to use the localized key. And the key is conditions. And we're going to use that same trick on all these guys. So this will be speed, and this guy, and here our key. All right, now hopefully most of our language is localized, so let's give this a shot. Localize strings. That's pushing up. We'll run a local build too to sanity check ourselves. Good. And let's come back here and confirm.
You know, I'm kind of surprised that Trello doesn't have a pirate mode language. Given that we've snuck pirate mode into the card aging power up, I'm genuinely surprised we don't have a for fun localization option. It'd be kind of fun to add in localization to power ups for something like that.
Yeah, and I mean this. The way that Trello is doing the localizations here, and of course the way that Trello does its own localizations, you're not paying a penalty to support more languages. So these aren't all bundled up and served all together to the client. Only the appropriate one for the client is served to the client. So it is in your interest to add as many languages as you can support, because again, you're not increasing page weight or anything. Trello will load the appropriate one for you. So let's give this guy a little refresher. So for right now, if we take a look, my language is currently set to ENUS. So I expect all of my English strings here. So I've got English strings there, and I've got some English strings here. But we already know that it's probably working because we replaced all these with t.localize key, and we're getting the text value back. So let's actually confirm that this is working. Switch into Spanish. Oh, this actually, we will have forgotten one thing, which we'll see in a second. So there we go. So we've got our Spanish titles here. That's a good sign. But what I suspect will not work is the settings page. And indeed, it did not work. So the reason it didn't work is because we remembered to pass our localization details in here, but we didn't remember to pass them in here. So we need to tell the iframe thing, hey, I need you to load this localization details. So let's push up our little fix here. Pass localization. Right. And that should kick this off. Another nice thing is most localization services will support JSON directly, so you'll be able to kind of upload this, whatever your native one is to the localization service as is, and then be able to pull from them the translated ones in the same format. So you shouldn't generally be having to flip between too many formats here. For the most part, JSON tends to be widely supported. So this guy is kind of finishing up its little build. There we go. So now our broken settings page, which was English only, will hopefully now be in Spanish. Continue up. Of course, what did we? Truly forgetting all of the things. So we spoke about localized node, but we never actually called localized node. All right, so now it knows that we have some strings, but we haven't told it to replace those strings. So let's do that. So when Trello calls t.render, let's also just have it localize our node for us. We'll do the same thing. We'll call it to do documents.body. All right, now truly third time's the charm here. All right, am I missing anything, Bentley?
No. I'm glad that you waited till the very last time to ask me that. Instead of asking me twice before, and it's like, no, you're not missing anything, and I was wrong twice.
Actually, for real, this time, localize settings. Good, our commit messages are getting more desperate and more embarrassing. And this settings page has more detail, right? If we were doing some string interpolation and we were trying to kind of pass through variables into our string, even in the HTML, we can do that, again, just with another data tag. So things like data, the args will kind of let you interpolate those args into your strings. You can also kind of set placeholders as well. So this details that, even though we don't need the functionality just yet for ourselves. All right, it says it's already built, so truly third time's the charm. Let's see what we get. Thank goodness. All right, so now we are in Spanish when Trello is in Spanish, both across here and there. And if we switch back, so if we did tell Trello that we only support 2 languages and that our default is English. So if we did switch to truly, I don't know which of these is Russian. Is it this one?
Yeah.
So if we do switch to Russian, the expectation will be that Trello is going to pick the English one because, again, if we take a look here, we told Trello, hey, our fallback default locale, you go ahead and use English if we don't support the locale that you're displaying in. So because we don't support Russian right now, it's going to be displaying in English. Perfect. So let's do one other test here, since we did supposedly fix our default locale detection. this is the remove personal settings option, which I just happen to know is third. I don't actually know what it says. So we removed our settings, so the fact that whatever locale we had chosen is now gone. So what we do expect is when I click this, we should default into metric because our locale right now is Russian. And indeed we do. We've defaulted into metric. So now we're going to switch our language back to ENUS. And since we have not set, so it's already a good sign, these are back to Imperial. So if I come in here, edit settings, we're back to Imperial. Awesome. So it looks like we're working. Again, not as pretty as we could maybe make it, but functionally, we are all there. So we've now localized our power up. We've internationalized it because folks who want metric can have metric. Folks who want Imperial can have Imperial. Oh, I think we missed one thing. I think we've got a bit of time. Let's fix this. So let's switch back into Spanish and we can see what I think we missed.
We're getting that from them though, right?
Yes, exactly. This is, so clouds. What is clouds in Spanish? It's probably not clouds. So this is coming from the weather API, which I think I have a page for. I do. And luckily, the weather API does actually have some multilingual support. So let's see if we can use that. Let's give it a shot. So we're going to come in here. We're going to give it a quick shot. And then we'll close out there if we can get this guy to work. So our weather API is telling us that it takes a lang param like that, just like it takes this units param. All right, so what we need to do is we have a T, but as we now know, T does not with itself doesn't carry the locale, so we're gonna have to pass it through. All right, so where does this guy fetch weather data? Oh, this is actually gonna be trickier than I thought. Trickier than I thought. So this comes back to the fact that we cache these conditions. And so unlike temperature and speed, which are numbers, and we can use nice little equations to get all possible variations of, that's not going to be quite as doable with the conditions thing because we need to ask the API for the conditions for each user.
Guess we could look at the weather API and find all possible weather conditions in English.
Certainly, yeah. We could translate it ourselves using our newfound
Bentley's bad idea today.
Localization. Well, Bentley's bad idea is probably the right idea because it lets us keep all of the benefits of our caching in place, which is important since this is a free API and we are trying our best to stay under the rate limits. So yes, maybe we won't be able to fully do this guy on stream here. We might have to leave that as an exercise to the reader of. Certainly, you could cache this with data on which language you've requested the thing, and if your cache does not have that language in it, use that as an opportunity to make another request. And subsequently add to your cache. So now if you have folks using your board in more than one language, your cache will end up containing more than one language. That way you still get some of the benefits of your cache, even though you might have to make another request. Even when you have cached data, you might have conditions in English and your current user is working in Spanish. So I think we're not gonna try to sort that out right now on stream.
No fancy cache today.
Yeah, well, or rather, we probably don't want to delve into the depths of caching and naming, right?
We're an hour deep already.
We are an hour deep. Do we got any questions that we should be addressing?
No. Someone asked if they could ask questions about this in the Trello developer Slack channel, which yes. Matt and I are both active in there as well as other people from the team. Feel free to ask questions. Like I said earlier, on the repository, if you open an issue will be notified if you send an email to integrations@trello.com. It'll hit one of our inboxes, so multiple ways for you to poke us if you get stuck.
Yes, and I should mention, let Bentley's manager know how he's doing with the docs. If you do find docs where you're like, this seems out of date or not right, or the screenshot is not right, please help us help you by doing one of two things. Either use the Suggest Edits button, which will let you kind of change the text to be either clearer or more correct, and then that will actually send us that, and we can take a look and get it right to the docs. That's super quick and that's super helpful. If it's something that's a little harder, right, where it's a screenshot, seems like it's no longer up to date, mention it in that Slack channel. Send us an email, as Bentley mentioned. Do the Suggest Edits and leave us a note. Really anything to let us know, like, hey, like, this doesn't look right. That way we can kind of get it fixed there. When you catch something, let us know so we can get that fixed.
Cool. Matt, I think this is it. It's been fun, as always. Learned how to be write better code.
This will be, we're only on part 2 of this series. I think we have more room for this power up to kind of continue to grow. So look forward to another hour-long Matt and Bentley sometime in the future.
Cool. All right, Matt. Cheers.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to say like and subscribe.
Smash that like and subscribe button at the bottom of the page. I don't know if it's there.